Hello. Hello. We're live right here. If you're here right now, know that we're so glad you came. We're here talking about how to write a great first book.
Thank you. Great being the operative word.
Great.
Yeah.
So if you're an aspiring author or if you're already an author, this is your time to ask your questions. We know you have lots of them. The response has been amazing. I cannot believe, even some of my friends who have been talking about how they were wishing to write a book. I never knew that some of my friends really, really wanted them. Hey, Mark Dorsey.
Mark Dorsey,
how are ya?
what's up?
Thanks for chiming in. So again, here answering questions about how to write a great first book. I think I see my sister on there too. We're waiting for this to show up on our end as well.
Yes.
So
always that delay time between going live and people realizing you're live.
Just a little bit.
We're here.
So real quick, just want to introduce my guest. I'm Andrea with the ADS Agency. We're marketing and branding. Hey, Nikki. This is Dennis Ross, award-winning ghostwriter extraordinaire. So just wanted to introduce him real fast. And he's been a ghostwriter for at least one of my clients, hopefully more.
Yes.
And his time is so golden. So I love it when I get time with him. So again, if you're an aspiring author, go ahead and ask your questions. Share this right now because you don't know who amongst your friends is also interested in writing a book. This is a new year.
Yeah.
Exactly. So these are things people are interested in doing, how to write a great first book. So, and now I'm going to also try to find you on your page. But while we're doing that, we're going to dig right into these tips, just so you're aware. Tip number 1. The economy of expression. So talk to me about what that means, because that sounds so ethereal at first, the economy of expression, but talk to the people about what that means in terms of writing a great first book.
Right, and so everyone has a book. At least everyone is told they should write a book when they tell their stories to others. The interesting thing is, in order to reach the masses with a story that happened to you personally, you have to learn the art of the economy of expression. The economy of expression means you are able to say more in less time. Let me say that again. The economy of expression means you can say more in less time. When you do that, your reader will give you more time to say more. And so everyone comes to a book from an antagonistic standpoint. If you write a book, remember, your readers have just read Malcolm Gladwell. They just read Jim Collins. They just read Adam Gopnik. They just read Hillinger or whoever. And you say, hey, I have a book. They don't really mean to be mean-spirited, but essentially they're saying, okay, yeah, this is sort of homemade type of book. And so you defeat that by immediately using the economy of expression, that is saying what matters most right from the outset. DirecTV uses this. They give you a 2-sentence description of a 2-hour movie, so you will stop on that station and not go somewhere else. So the economy of expression is the art of being able to dither down everything that you want to say in a succinct form so your reader gets it and gets it now, so they can relax and say, hey, this guy has something to say, and they give you more time as a result.
So I hope you got all that. And I'm going to pause real fast and say hi to Jordana. Hello, Jordana. And Natasha.
Natasha, what's up?
She's so great. I love Natasha. And my sister Nicole, Mark Johnson. Hey to everyone. Thanks so much for joining us in the snow, in the cold. Hopefully you're safe and warm at home. And Dennis Ross, again, our award-winning ghostwriter, just went through point number 1, which was the economy of expression, learning how to succinctly get your point across. Chapter 1, chapter 2, hooking them in a way that's so unique, in a way that they've never heard before, potentially.
And you know, Andrea, this goes into so many things, but this deals with the craft of writing. Many of us have the passion for writing, and we have passion for our story. But remember, we lived it, no one else did. And so when you're trying to write a story on paper as compelling as you lived the story, you have to learn to move away from it and learn the craft of only dealing with that which is going to be most attractive to someone who doesn't know you, doesn't love you, doesn't want to know you, doesn't want to love you.
They're not your friends and family.
They're not your friends and family.
Your friends and family are going to buy your book.
They're going to get it no matter how bad or good it is.
Exactly.
We're not writing for them. We are writing for the person who really has no relationship to us, and we're saying our story is so good, we are able to, by craft, use certain tactics to pull you in so you can give us time to go ahead and lay out the entire story in page 20, 30, 40, 50. So the economy of expression does that. It is basically the mechanics of great writing.
Michael Picard says writing is a skill that develops over time, so don't harbor the notion that your first one will be your best work, because it won't.
Mm-hmm.
Let's
Well,
think to that
who's
one.
that, Michael?
Yeah, Michael Picard.
Michael
Like Captain Picard.
Right. Well, he is. He's actually right. It's very difficult, and it's a very interesting thing. It almost has application to music. You know, you hear a group's first album, and it's usually when they were the brokest, when they were struggling the most, and concurrently, it tends to be their best album.
Yeah.
And so once they become successful, the recordings are better, but they may not be as passionate as that first recording. The same with writing. Your writing, your first work may not be the best as it relates to editing, as it relates to structure, as it relates to sequence, but often that is when the writing is most passionate, which goes to another point. Many times you're dealing with having your writing being proper or being effective, and a lot of times when you know the least about writing, you can write the best, but it is not the most correct form of writing. It's sort of a longer conversation, but he's absolutely right. As you go on and as you write consistently, your writing becomes better. You understand the craft better. But remember, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect if you're not practicing perfectly. Practice makes permanent. You can practice a long time and just make permanent your mistakes. So it's not just practicing. It is, what are you practicing? Are you practicing correctly? Because practice itself can just take you into doing permanent mistakes.
Wow, that's awesome. Jordana says, honest work versus cultivated work. Gotcha. Nicholas DeVoe, hello. We're just watching through. Amy Hedges, hi Amy.
What's
We're
up,
just
Amy?
taking a moment to say hello to you all and thank you for sharing. Vernon Johnson and George Hendricks, hello. So good. My aunt is on edgy. So great first point. All about being so succinct, and also knowing that your first book can be just a craft of passion, you know, and maybe sometimes because you're so uninhibited by all these lessons learned in writing,
Right.
You might be producing your very best work the first
The
time.
uncultivated genius, and it happens very often, and so we don't want to stay in that state, but we want to learn the craft, but maintain the passion we had before we learned the craft. And so writing is a dedication. It is you have to be dedicated to the practice, the discipline of writing if you're going to not only express the passion of your story, but also learn the tactics, the mechanisms of great writing.
Nikki says, proper versus effective. I need to share this with my students. She's a teacher.
Right. Okay.
What are you practicing nice? Okay.
Yeah, practice versus, does she wants to deal with that? Does she?
No, she would say that's a good point.
Oh, yeah, it is. Because writing, you know, many times when you're in the editing process, let me say this, and please hear this. You can edit a great book into being a good book. You can edit a great book. You can downgrade a great book into a good book, and you can edit a good book into a great book. And so you have to be very careful with understanding what it does when you make the proper moves, the proper grammar, the proper English in a book, that you have not sterilized what was going to be felt by the heart, because now it's only felt by the mind. So I read your page and I say, wow, this is correct. These sentences are correct. The English is correct, but I feel nothing. So you have to always make the balance between the two. For example, you may have a sentence that starts off, have you ever considered going to Oklahoma? And that may be the correct form of a sentence. But the more effective way may be, ever considered going to Oklahoma? Taking off the have you. There's certain things you can do that give you conversational writing, which is what you seek, versus the proper form for every sentence. That's a whole other thing, but let me use the economy of expression and not go further.
Yes, I know it.
Oh, boy.
Quick question for you from Jordana. Okay. Jordana, forgive me, I'm not going to mess up your last name. I always think of it as McGonagall.
I'm not touching it.
I'm sorry, Jordana. I know your name is Jordana. And so she says, Favorite book for writers? I'm partial to Bird by Bird and Lamont, but interested to hear your take. Favorite book for writers? Do you happen to have one?
Wow, there's a book, Stein on Writing, which is a great book. There's another book, Show, Don't Tell, Show Not Tell. There's so many books, but I would recommend those two books, Stein on Writing, and also Show, Don't Tell, which is, that book probably came out years and years ago. If there's one book, I'm thinking, you have so many, but you're making me think of something. Eric Hoffer. He wrote a book, The Nature of Mass Movements. It's called True Believer. If there is one book I would say you should read to not only be able to observe succinct idea writing, but just the forward, provocative nature of Eric Hoffer's writing will make you a better writing just from reading that one book. So I would put True Believer at the top of the list by Eric Hoffer, The Nature of Mass Movements. So it's called True Believer, The Nature of Mass Movements. And if you read back, it deals with leadership in the political frame. It deals with society. It deals with sociology. It deals with a lot of issues. Eric Hoffer was a longshoreman out in the Bay Area in California, an uneducated man, technically, who wrote one of the most erudite pieces of literature the world has ever seen. In fact, all of you philosophers who are studying philosophy and looking for your terminal degree in the area know that you almost have to master that book from this uneducated man for you to be technically licensed as an educator. That is how profound it is. So I would say get that book and get it immediately. When you read the first few pages, you are reading absolute great writing, and it will make you a better writer.
Awesome. And I'm not a writer like Dennis is. However, there's a wonderful book called Tell to Win. I think it's by Peter Gruber. Don't quote me. I was expecting that question. But Tell to Win is basically the whole premise of how we need a very passionate story to compel people to do anything. So Tell to Win is just a good thing to keep in mind when you're creating a story in the first place. And books are about creating stories, telling stories.
It is. Made to Stick by the Heath brothers. Made to Stick. Dan Heath. There's so many, but that deal with storytelling. And that really comes down to, I know we probably have am I skipping? Am I going too fast?
No, you're okay.
I'm
your
just
clock
thinking.
right?
No, my clock is wrong. It's like 15 minutes. So,
they can keep us on time. I know you will. Tell me when
how much time do we have?
We have 30 minutes total. So.
Oh, okay. So
it's going to go super fast.
Yeah. So when you think about your story, you think about telling your story, you have to understand, it's what we call narrative construction. How are you, if you think about this, when a building is being built, if it is not built properly, the building cannot stand. It cannot stand the weight being imposed upon it by people and cars and whatever, driving near to whatever. And so it has to be weight-bearing. Your story is nothing different. It's not different at all. You have to understand how to construct a story such that it can withstand the weight of critique, the weight of the antagonist who's reading it. It has to withstand the weight of attention spans today that are about 7 seconds long. And so you have to move away from your passion and start to understand story engineering. That is, just like an architect engineers a building to stand, how are you designing your story so it can stand the test of time? Your book is going to be here a lot longer than you will. Your book is going to outlive you. That being the case, what are you building? You must understand how the facets, the mechanisms that allow a story to stand the test of time, which gets into craft.
Love it. Okay, we have 2 quick questions. I'm just going to throw these out there, and then we're going to move to point 2 because I don't want us to get too behind.
I can't really. Other questions?
I'm going to give it to you. So one is about. Actually, I can't read my own writing now. Bobby Robinson's on. Yay! He wants to write this one. Michael Picard said, "How do you know which way you're taking the book?" How do we know which way we're taking the book? I guess which avenue, which direction, once we start writing? Yeah,
he may be considering, talking about in what person. Are we speaking in the first person? Are we speaking in the third person? Are we, who's telling the story? Is this narrated? Is this coming from, the mind of the person who experienced it? And so there is no right way to answer that question. There's several right ways. You just have to pick the best right way. And you only know that through, with my clients, we go through a series of interviews where I sit down with the client, we talk about their story. We record these interviews. After about 7 to 10 hours of recording the interview, we get pretty close to exactly how the story should be told. Interestingly enough, a person tells their story orally much different than they write it. And so when I'm asking certain questions I've learned to ask over the years that pull out the deeper parts of the story, what happens is a picture starts to emerge, starts to come to the surface that, okay, we should tell this story from this perspective. We should make a fictional story, a truth story fictional. Or we should do what we call fictionalized truth, which means we're going to tell your true story, but we're going to put different names on it. The content is true, but the participants are fictional. So you get all of that from really sitting down with the client and hearing and prodding and understanding, where their story has passion and where the pilot light is, so they can, so you can get the right perspective. It doesn't come immediately. Sometimes it comes quicker than others, but it takes time to know what is the most effective, what we call the emotional angle, the emotional perspective to tell the story so that it has the greatest reach.
Michael wants to know, were you talking about doing that while you're editing? And also he says, do you write fiction or nonfiction?
Both, nonfiction narrative and fiction, both. Some of my clients, probably 60 to 65% of my clients are nonfiction narrative, whether they're narrative science or just telling a story, biography or whatnot. And the other portion are fictional authors, novelists.
This is interesting. 2 questions are coming fast. They're coming fast.
Okay.
Tiana Langley. Hey, Tiana.
Tiana.
Minutes ago, and I know you asked it, but I hadn't forgotten you. You asked about, as a new author, how do you go about publishing? I know publishing is a big one. We could do a whole nother, 3 or 4 of these on publishing alone. Yeah. Quick, fast advice on publishing as a new author.
Yeah, so as a new author, the world has changed so dramatically. And so, of course, you have commercial publishing, you have self-publishing. You have the whole online digital side, and you have the commercial side, the Penguin Books, Hachette, Random House, Wiley, Simon Schuster, all of that. Not to avoid your question, but concentrate on writing a great book. Concentrate on, don't place your time on how it's going to get out to the world. Believe me, publishing houses need you more than you need them. Publishing houses need great stories that are written just as greatly as they were experienced, more than you need a deal. If you get a great story, fictional, nonfiction, to a publishing house, and it is just undoubtedly phenomenal, you will have choices whether to go commercially or whether to do it yourself online, which is a whole different thing. I will say this, if you go with a commercial publisher, many times, and they don't want you to know this, hope they don't cut us off. So, does Simon & Schuster own Facebook? Because they're about to cut us off. We're going to hit an algorithm. When you cut them!
Let's just pray.
Okay, let's pray.
We have our backup.
So we're back up. Right. They don't want you to know this, but commercial publishers are going to either give you fame or fortune, but you won't get both. So they will say, okay, sign with this commercial house, and you'll be in Barnes & Nobles, and you'll be in Hudson News, and you'll be in your face will be everywhere. People will know you're an author, but we'll keep all the money. So you may pull 8 to 12% of the sale. That's 8 to 12 cents per dollar if you're with a commercial house. You make it in advance if you're high profile. And there are a lot of particulars and nuances of the deal that I don't have time to go into right now. But suffice it to say, if you have a great book and you sell that book online and sell 5,000 copies, you will make more than selling 100,000 copies for the publisher. So you may not be famous with these 5,000 copies because you're not in all the bookstores, but
you'll get a lot more money.
You'll be a lot more. The financial reward will be greater, as opposed to the commercial house giving you this fame, but they will keep 88 cents of every dollar or 92 cents of every dollar. So you have to, and it really, to do it justice, it's a longer conversation on those decisions, but concentrate on writing a great book. If you get a great book, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
And, that's a whole nother conversation too, because there's a lot of self-marketing and self-building of an audience you can do yourself and should do. If you're even thinking about becoming an author, number one, get your social media audiences up and get your email list together, because you're going to need it by the time that you're ready to start publishing and pushing. if you've got those audiences, you can do a lot of that yourself.
You can do
and
a
then
lot
you
of
can
it.
win on the financial side,
Right.
and then also have your own audience. You already have people that you can publish to.
Ideally, you want a commercial house to contact you. You don't want to contact them. You want to make so much noise that you answer the phone as opposed to picking it up to call someone.
Exactly. This is a great question
What
from
is it?
Mark Johnson. He says, I would like to write about a technical topic, architecture. So Mark's
Okay.
an architect, which most viewers of mine should know by now. He's a faithful watcher. So he'd like to write about a technical topic, architecture that may be niche and best practice, but I don't want it to be too technical. How should I approach it?
Wow, you have to approach it from the story form. And so I just finished a work for a client. She's a scientist. She's a biochemist. And we wrote a narrative science book. That is, we took the research, all the scientific research, and we created a story with characters. So all of the results of the research are happening to these characters. And in the book, as opposed to it being a science, novel, or instead of it being something that you had to have a scientific background to understand, it's just a book of stories. The same thing takes place. It doesn't matter what field you're in, what your discipline, whether it is psychology, pharmacology, whether it is, basic sciences, whether it is athletics, whether it is something technical. It all comes down to what is the story. And if you don't want your book to be technical, don't write it technically. Write it as a story with characters who are experiencing the things you want to teach. So people can learn without knowing they are learning.
Awesome. Nikki says 20 minutes. She's my timekeeper.
20 minutes already?
I know.
Okay.
Does that mean we have 20 minutes? We're 20 minutes in, so we only have 10 minutes left? Okay. We're good. If we do not get to your question live, we will go back and answer it later, so don't worry.
We're going back.
Do not worry if you're watching this on the replay or otherwise, but if you are watching it now, pause for a moment and share this if you haven't already. Thank you, Nicole, who always shares it. And those of you who do, we have a reason for you to share it later too. But the biggest reason is you don't know who in your friends list also is interested in writing a great first book. So
Right.
make sure you share this, please.
Right.
Another thing, Natasha says, I appreciate your candor.
Oh, thank you,
That's
Natasha.
my friend, Natasha Jordan Chambliss. She's so into the arts and everything. She says, okay, Thomas Edward Felder.
Thomas!
Second.
Thomas, I was just talking to Roger Thomas about you tonight. Oh, man. What's up, Thomas? We went to school together
did you?
years ago. Yeah. I heard he's in Atlanta. Wow.
He says, I'm just joining, so you may have already addressed this, but how important is it for the title to pop in order to reach the desired audience?
It's very important. And Thomas, I am praying for you. Let me just answer his question. We dealt with the succinct nature. We dealt with the economy of expression, which is kind of what Thomas is referring to. Thomas is a great speaker himself, so he knows this, much of this. So the economy of expression basically says we say more in less time, so the reader gives us more time to say more. When you're dealing with titles, you have to say something, as he said, that pops, something that is inquisitive, something that is circled around suspense. What is the art of suspense? It is the art of asking a question and then taking as long as possible to answer it. You have to take that approach as it relates to your titling. For example, I'm working on a book now, and the title is No Sex on Sundays.
Okay.
Okay, so...
Blow you away.
Okay.
Blow you away.
Okay, so we chose that title because the author is unknown. She's making her first entrance into authorship. And so we had to use something that is...
Jarring.
Yeah, if nothing else is going to get you to open that first page, and then we will use the economy of expression to sequence our paragraphs to make sure you are on page 10, 12, and 50, and then you skip a bathroom break because you think the words will change if you close the book. So it is a line, it is a sequence from what Thomas was talking about, from choosing a title that immediately makes you, want to know what this is about, to choosing a description that explains even further what the title is about, to then sequencing the paragraphs, thereafter, that continue that rhythm, that approach of pulling you in, asking questions, planting seeds. And let me just say this, as Thomas made me think of something.
Yeah.
Writing is farming, and I teach my clients this all the time, and my students. Writing is farming. Please, if you don't hear anything I'm saying this evening, please hear this. there is an agricultural facet to great writing. Great writing is based on planting seeds that you water along the way that finally come to harvest once you have made your inspirational point, your conclusion of your book. If you look at your page as being the ground, the land, the acreage, you are planting seeds of your story, you will write differently. Because you'll touch here, you'll touch there, you'll say something they don't really understand, and you'll water it a little bit in page 3. You will water the seed in page 7 because you know in page 20 that seed is going to become a bush, that's going to become a tree, that's going to become a... So if you think about your writing, not just from the standpoint of the economy of expression, using titles that are going to pull a person in with intrigue and suspense, but then looking at your first page as, I am a farmer, I am not a writer. Please hear this, Lord Jesus. I am a farmer, and I am going to plant seeds of my story such that you will have an inclination of what I'm talking about, but I will not fully feed it to you until much later in the book. And so that if you literally just change and nudge your thinking towards farming, agriculturally, your writing will adhere to how a great farmer grows a land over a period of time. And you'll see things differently. Your story will come into place. The narrative construction, the architecture of your story will be looked at differently. That gets me excited when I talk.
I see.
Because it is so important. I always tell my students to really understand what that means. You know, you will do a lot better sometimes to study farming than you would writing sometimes if you want to learn how to be a great writer. Let me also say this concerning that.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, we need more time.
We do. It's going to go fast. And
Okay.
We're going to get to our other points on
Okay, we need more time. But
yeah.
okay, the other issue is this: when we're writing our books, what we're seeking is athletic writing. We're seeking for our writing to be muscular, for our writing to jump off the page. So we train our writing mind as an athlete trains his body. We are cutting fat. We want to be lean, okay? We want to be pliable, malleable. What does that mean? We're cutting fat out of sentences. The fattiest word in writing is T-H-A-T. T-H-A-T is the fattiest word in writing. Get it off of the why?
Why?
Here's an example. I say this on my page. Follow me at Book Ambition. And
Yes,
you'll see all these
Book
things. I
Ambition
forgot
on
to say it.
Instagram, sorry.
Instagram, I forgot it.
He's on Instagram right now.
Go.
Book Ambition, all together.
Book-
Book Ambition,
look.
that's where you can find him on Instagram. Don't leave the slide chat yet, though. We'll put it in the notes, okay?
Right.
Yeah.
Because, ghostwriters, we're always behind the veil. So we've opened up some social media. So that's our home. We'll be there at Book Ambition. So the fattiest word in the English language as far as writing that weighs down your writing and prevents it from running the race called attention is that. Here's an example. I say this on my page. Susan said that I should eat. Pretty basic sentence. Mm-hmm. It's fat. The sentence should read, Susan said I should eat. Taking out that one word, that, T-H-A-T, throughout your book actually it cuts weight and frees your writing to run faster. If you just eliminated, and there are another 50 words, but if you just eliminated the one word, T-H-A-T, you will be amazed how much better your writing reads. That's just one tip, and let's just leave it there, Laura.
Michael Picard might have some other words too, because I know he's another writer that's out there. Thank you so much, and Michael's answering questions too out there. So
What's up, Michael? Thank you.
Appreciate your help. There's a question out there about, what was it? Brett Scott had a question about writer's block, and Michael Picard said there's no such thing.
There's no such thing as. Thank you, Michael.
So he agrees with you.
Yeah, there is no writer's block. We don't do that. Do you have eater's block? So we don't do writer's block. We are writers. We eat every day. We write every day. We think every day. We don't submit ourselves, our thinking, to bad thoughts, and that's just bad thinking. People say that when they don't want to do the work to learn the craft so they can push through. Well, yeah, some days you eat more than others. Some days you have issues and you don't want to eat much. But on a consistent basis, you're eating. On a consistent basis, we don't write great every day, but we write every day so the instances of our great writing become more frequent because it's something we do all the time.
Jan Hill says we need an extended chat for this one. I know. I know, it's far too much. It's daunting.
Is that it? Are we done?
No, there's more. However, we've got Nicole tell us how much time we've got. I appreciate you being my timekeeper. Let's go to the second point, and we're going to do the second and third. Maybe you might find a way to wrap these together.
Okay.
But point 2 is, what is your story? You're talking to me something about a pot of boiling water. What is your story? It's not just what happens. And then also your pilot light.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay, so in order to be a great writer, in order to write great stories people will clamor over, you have to find your pilot light. Now, your pilot light can be different from the story you're telling, but what is your pilot light? Your pilot light is the angle of your expression. Your pilot light is that dysfunction, that abuse, that disappointment, that failure. That thing that has stayed with you your entire life that you can't get rid of. Your pilot light may be the thing that you told yourself you will never tell another human being for as long as you live. Your pilot light is that thing that will never leave you, no matter how successful or how much of a failure you may be now or maybe in the future. When you find your pilot light, you find the angle of your expression. And it is so important because it allows you to hit your target, your emotional target. Let me say it this way, and I'm going to try to, I could get up and run because this excites me so much. Okay, let me.
And Nikki says we're already at 30 minutes.
And we're at 30 minutes right now?
We're going to wrap up anyway. Stay with us. Just hang in there, and this is so good. Go ahead.
When you find your pilot light, you find the unique position of your sharing. You find the unique angle, the filter through which your story is told. Interestingly enough, your pilot light may never be told itself. It is the lens through which you see the world. You have to be honest with yourself when you're dealing with what your pilot light is, because your pilot light is usually an uncomfortable place, something we've tucked deep down inside. When you find your pilot light and you write through that angle, then your craft has the right positioning to tell the story. Why is a sniper a sniper? Is it because in the military he has learned to hit a target from 1,000 feet out, or whatever the case is, 2,000 feet out, whatever it is? Even though he has the angle, he has this craft to hit, he spends all of his time getting in position. Let me say it this way. Your pilot light is your position so you can use your craft to hit your target. Your pilot light is, what position am I in life? In a tree, in the weeds, in a ditch, in a cave? The experiences that you have experienced, if you are honest with yourself, create the filter through which great stories will come out of you on a consistent basis. But it is only when you take the time to find out, what is it that burns within me, the pilot light that keeps the fire going, what is it that burns in me that I cannot get rid of? When you find that thing, you can tell a children's story, you can tell a story of politics, of sociology, but it's coming through the prism, and your readers can feel the warmth of your pilot light even though you never told them what it is. Your pilot light creates the warmth, the angle. A reader is reading and they're saying, man, there's something about this guy, something about his writing. He's only talking about diet, but I feel something. That is because the writer has been honest with themselves. And let me say this last and then we'll go, I promise, 60 seconds, I promise.
No, it's good. No, that's good.
Okay. The job of a writer is to give your reader words for their wordless places. What does that mean? The most impactful events that have happened in our lives have all happened in wordless places. There are no words down there. That thing you went through doesn't have any words. The closest you can get to words are tears. When you provide your reader with words to the event they never could express, they say, wow, that is it. I could never say it. But you have given me a lexicon for my wordless places. When you give your reader words for things they have experienced, because you talked about your abuse and now they have the words to talk about theirs. You've talked about that dysfunction and now they have words for their dysfunction. You have masses of readers that will follow and buy everything you ever put out because they become your champion because they were once deaf and now they can speak. And I'll just leave it there. I can't even.
No, I appreciate that. That's so golden. I love that so much. And I'm not even sure how you use that, because I feel like you can use that when you're writing a story that's about your life, but how do you take that passion? I guess when you're passionate about a topic, you can still channel that feeling and energy to.
Well, it's because you can recognize the dishonesty in another and give them your synthetic honesty.
Give it to a character.
You can give it to a character, a person. Put it like this. I have learned, fortunately I have never struggled with drugs, but I've learned that drug addicts can recognize other drug addicts. That we know we've been through the same path. Vietnam vets can recognize if there's another vet. People who have been through hell recognize the smell of hell in your clothes, even though your clothes are St. John's now. They know exactly. So even if I'm writing about you or someone else, and you're not honest with me, I can recognize, because I've been honest with me, where your story is. And I can tell the story, and you can come back and say, wow, how did you know? I didn't even tell you those details. I knew because I went to war too. And I recognize, even though you didn't tell me the details that needed to be told.
Oh,
No.
Amy. Oh, Amy, she's so fabulous. She says, wow, I'm close to tears hearing you talk about the pilot light. Thank you. Love all that you said. And Angela says, words for their wordless places. Yes, excellent.
That's what our job is as writers, to add words to wordless places.
So good. We do not have time for everything. I know you want us to stay. I know we missed a couple questions in here, and we will get back to them. Michael Picard says, genuine emotions. I think that's like the number one thing you could get out of this entire chat today about how to write a great book, is to be so genuine and be so authentic. The ADS agency, shameless plug, but
What was it? What was it called?
Right.
The ADS agency?
The ADS agency.
Is that ADS?
Marketing and branding. But we do believe in, in being quite human, putting human back in marketing. We're about marketing, but a lot of what we do is content driven. It's writing blogs, it's writing articles, it's creating content that resonates with audiences. So there's so much of what we do that's storytelling too. And I can tell you there's nothing like being genuine and authentic and speaking from a place of passion that really moves people to action. And again, back to that book I was talking about before, Tell to Win. I really do think it's by Peter Gruber. I'll look it up and let you know. But that book too is all about using the power of story to move people to action. I love what you said about the pilot light, finding that burning fire within us. Dennis was telling me about, he's a ghostwriter for several people at any given time. I don't know how you keep all the stories going.
Just do it. You can't think about doing it. You just have to do it.
He just does it. And he told me a story about a lady he was on the phone with, and he just stopped her. She was like being quite technical about what she wants in her book. It was like a how-to book or something.
Right. You mean
Mark Johnson, to your point about like writing a technical book.
Right. She was a psychologist.
She was a psychologist and just like trying to be like, here's my outline, here's my major points, blah, 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 and be quite sterile with it. And there's so many books out there about the same topics, but how do you create something that makes people say, wow?
Right.
I have to read that.
Well, we had to, she was doing a lot of, I hope we have 2 or 3 minutes. She wanted to do a book basically that dealt with her research in the area of psychology and how it was going to apply to the corporate frame and the academic frame, and it was, research. And she was stoic, she was from India, or she is from India. But we had to get to, where is the humanity in this research? Because research books are everywhere. We don't care about research books. We have them. We went to school. We have textbooks. What are you doing different? And so what I've learned with my clients is, unless you can find the pilot light. In her particular case, I said to her, look, doctor, imagine we have finished writing your book, and we are at the end of your book right now. It is done. We're about to release it. I said, I am writing the acknowledgement. I'm writing the acknowledgements page of your book. I said, just tell me, what do I say to your father? What do you want me to say to your father?
To your father.
And the phone went silent. I heard this. The reality was, she went to school and got her PhD in psychology to make her father proud of her. The reality is, a month before she graduated with her PhD, her father passed. The reality is, everything that we talked about before, if placed through the prism of her personal experience, would now be felt by the reader immeasurably. Now we found the pilot light. She was 4 years old, 5 years old in India, growing up impoverished, and her father would before school lay down on the floor with her and make her listen to him reading Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, Moby Dick. Make sure that he said, one day you're going to get to America and you're going to need to know the literature classics. You're going to need to know these things as a child. And she came to America, got this education, and made something of herself for the purpose of, I need my father to know the time he spent with me in all of those years was worth it. Now, when I talk about her research, and psychological research about human behavior, now it means something different because I understand my story through hearing hers. That is what I mean by the pilot light and how important it is to get beyond what you want to talk about and talk about what you feel. Okay, I'm done.
And we're right at 40 minutes. We don't want to push you too much farther. And I know, again, we have questions here that we will get to afterwards.
Thomas Felder, call me. My bad.
Thomas Felder was awesome. He was like, brother, you're fluent. He said that.
Call me, Thomas, before you leave Atlanta. You're leaving tomorrow.
Yeah, do lunch or something. If you don't get shut down with the snow, I think it'll be on. In any case, so good. I think everyone who's watching would agree. This was such a wonderful chat, all about how to write a great first book. We talked about the economy of expression. What is your story? What is your pilot light? Everything from publishing houses need great stories. Yeah,
more than you need them.
More than you need them.
Right.
Uncultivated genius can be monumentally amazing. Again, to your point about writing a great story. Mm-hmm. If you would just concentrate on writing a great story first, the other things will follow. So
it will follow. At Book Ambition, BOOKAMBITION. Follow me at Book Ambition.
Book Ambition, yes. On Instagram.
On Instagram, yes. See, I'm just the social media thing. We ghostwriters are behind the veil, so I'm stepping out now. Okay, let me stop writing all these books for all these years behind the veil. We are now on social media.
Yes. So Book Ambition, follow him. He'll answer more questions there. If you're watching this on the replay, we'll still answer your questions. I'll bug him. Right. He'll answer them because he's nice to me. So.
Wasn't there a record about? No, that's Refill. Yeah, give me. That's never mind.
Oh yeah, a refill.
Refill.
And thanks so much for watching. Maybe we'll have him back sometime. Maybe he'll be gracious enough to come back sometime. So, again, Jan Hill, great chat. Thank you.